Hi all, and welcome to our explanatory video about 2.9, your independent reading responses. This task is called Stalk and Talk, and basically it means you're stalking the text, so you're really looking into it, hunting them out, and then really looking into them, and then you're talking about them. Alright, it's a generic thing, so it's not about any particular theme. You can choose whatever you like. So you can follow your class theme for the year if there is one, or you can just go for gold. I like it when kids just go for gold and read what they want to read. Now, before I carry on, in the explanatory notes, the description below the video, you can find time tags. Just click on those time tags so that you don't have to watch the whole video. The time tags will take you to the page that you want. Right, so let's move on. Okay, page 2, here's your table of contents. And you can click on any of these, and they are hyperlinks, so they will take you straight to the page that you want. Now for what to do and the conditions of assessment, I'll just move me down a bit. You must write responses about 6 texts. So a response is something that shows how you've really connected with the text. Saying things like, I really hated Fred because he was a plonker and the ending was really disappointing. That is not thinking about the text. We will show you how to do that though later on. So a response shows that you've thought deeply about the text, and that you'll explain how you were or perhaps were not able to connect with it on a personal level and why. You'll explain what you think the text tells us about people and our world, and you'll explain what you think of the author or director's purpose. Don't freak out, we're going to scaffold you through. A response is not an essay, and it's not a review either. A response lets us know how a text affected you, your thoughts, your feelings, even your actions. It's full of the personal pronouns I, me, and my, as opposed to an essay, for example. So it can be written in your personal voice. It doesn't have to be formal. So just go blah on the page, and you can zhuzh it up later. Okay, move me again. Here's an example of part of a personal response that's about Richie McCaw, our ex-All Black captain's autobiography. So I'd like to say that reading Richie McCaw's autobiography was inspiring, but did it make me train more, train harder, love the 50 burpees my coach makes me do at the end of each training session? No. So I found it inspiring in that I love the idea of being dedicated as McCaw is, but I'm still as bad at training as ever. I guess I'm living proof that we all like to live a little vicariously sometimes. You only need to look at the way my generation can't get enough of Instagram, believing they are living the life they see in the photos of others, which are probably fake anyway. If I'm honest, I kind of like to imagine that McCaw and I are a little bit alike. This might sound ridiculous, me versus an All Black captain, but I did relate to the part where he talked about he said, and there's a quotation coming in there. So these bits here are the evidence, and you've got to give evidence from your text. You have to do it or you can't pass. Okay, and the other thing is here, this discussion of Instagram shows that the student is thinking about human behaviours and the way we live our life now through Instagram and things. So that's really good critical thinking coming in there. Right, let's scroll down a bit. The required text types. So as NZQA says, at least 4 written texts must be included, 2 of which must be extended text. So that means long text. The remaining 2 must maybe visual, oral, or written text. Okay, so that means you've got 4 written texts here. 2 of them are long, like a novel, autobiography, biography, and 2 of them can be long or short. So that includes articles and things. We've got examples down here to show you. Okay, and then the other 2 can be anything you like. So you can do an episode of your Black Mirror or whatever you like. You can do an episode of the news. Ooh. Okay, so long as there's 6 texts there, 4 of them written, 2 of them extended, then you're fine. Now, according to NZQA's conditions of assessment, if you are listening to a written text, then it cannot be counted as a written text. Okay, so that's your audiobooks out, which is a bit of a bummer. It stands to reason then that watching the film version of a book does not count as you reading the book. And I've given a little tip to your teachers here, and I've said that when I'm teaching, I don't accept any responses about a book that's been made into a film. There are plenty of other books, okay? And it just means that there are no arguments. Right. All 6 texts must be chosen not by your teacher, but by you. You cannot all do a response on the same text, so that means your class. So you can't do them about the text you're studying for 2.1 or 2.2, your externals, your written and your film texts. And the teacher cannot give the whole class something to read or watch or read so that you then all do a response in that text. These are the NZQA rules. Yes, you can do that for a practice, and maybe your teacher is guiding you through some of the things you could say about that text, and you'll practice it. But then once you're doing this assessment, you are on your own, and it's got to be your own choice. Responses will be handed in throughout the year, not as one big lot at the end of the year, although some teachers do that, but I don't know how you cope with 25 kids handing in 6 responses all at the end of the year. So later on in the booklet, we've got a little template to help you manage your time around that. So they should be done as naturally as you come across texts. As I say, apart from that, your teacher will have a nervous breakdown if you hand them in all at once. Okay, presentation options. You can present your response in any way you like, but just make sure you are able to communicate well-developed ideas in the method you've decided to use. For example, if you're a visual person, it might be tempting to present your feelings in an amazing painting or series of photographs. I was just going to move me, but I don't need to. This will be great, except you won't be able to communicate in enough detail, you won't be able to include examples or show how they relate to your ideas. You could, however, combine visual and oral to make something like a mini documentary or a visual diary in which you use props or clips while you discuss your ideas. You could also, for example, simply record yourself talking about the text just on your phone. So it's just an audio. Make sure you discuss this with your teacher first in terms of what technology you'll use and how you're going to send it. It's got to be able to work. It can be a nice alternative from all the writing that we do in school to be able to do something orally like that. You will need to plan out what you've got to say first though, and you can use the planning sheets further on in this book for that. As I say, planning tables. Right, next page. Page 5, can I use my responses for other standards? Yes, happy days. Again, this is up to your teacher though, or perhaps your school policy or the department's policy. But if you've written a brilliant response, I'm just reading here, that covers a criteria for 2.4 writing, then it can be used as one of your pieces of writing. So this means if you want it to be used for 2.4 and to pass, it will need to be full of well-developed ideas, but you've got to do that for 2.9 anyway. It's got to be well-structured, nailing a bit of personal voice, using language features, brilliant vocab, etc., error-free, all the things you've got to do to fulfill the criteria for 2.4. But shouldn't all your writing be like that anyway? Really? The other thing you could use it for is 2.5. You've got a great response, so there's your content. You can just present that response. So again, you've got to remember that your presentation has to fulfill the criteria for 2.5, and that's them there. So your content's got to be well developed. Again, as I've said, it has to be for 2.9 anyway. But your response needs to be well structured, and you've got to be using those language features. So remember, when you're presenting, if you're just doing a headshot like I am, it's quite hard to show body language, so you might need to think about how you're going to record that if it's a recording. Obviously, if you're doing it in front of the class, that's easy to see your whole body, but okay, something to think about there. The length of your response, there is no specific requirement here. It's not about how many words you can write, but what those words say. Your response could be only 2 paragraphs long. Okay, so if you're writing 4 pages, there's something wrong. We have suggested and will help you plan for 3 paragraphs. This means we recommend you focus on 3 aspects of the text that pushed your buttons. Alright, so I think it's just easier that way. Okay, page 6. Where to find text. Your library, obviously the school or public library. If you have a Kobo or a tablet or something and you want to use the ebooks, you can. And it explains a bit about that here. For current events, any newspaper app or website or an actual newspaper, here are some of the key New Zealand papers, and here are some of the other worldwide ones. So the links are there, all handy for you, ready to go. Any magazine or website of your choice. If you're into mountain biking or something, you get a mountain biking magazine, then have a look at one of those articles, or something that you found on a website. So it's the world's your oyster really, but just make sure you get your teacher to check that it's the right level for the standard. Obviously the movie theatre, television, computer, a radio show, talkback show, something like that. Also you can find text as part of your work for English internals. So perhaps you're looking to do a type of writing for 2.4 and you find an example of that style. You might like to do a response on that example. Or connections across text, you've got to choose text for that, so why not do a response on one of them. And also the information literacy standard 2.8, so that's research. You're going to be doing a lot of reading there. You can use one of those sources as a text to respond to. Remember, an elephant never forgets, remember text must be at the appropriate curriculum level. Check with your teacher, I keep saying that, make sure you do. Text should be appropriate content wise, and don't make out like you don't know what that means, because you do. So again, check with your teacher first if you think it's a little bit on the edge. Okay, page 7. What is NZQA looking for? So we've got up here the achievement criteria for achieved, merit and excellence hiding there. For all of them, you've got to form developed personal responses. All right, so what does that mean? That means this. Let's have a look at this box here. A personal response is something that shows that you, I'm going to make that a bit bigger, understand the text, engage with the text, like really connect with it. You have some opinions about it. To ensure this is developed, remember, we're not just saying I hated Fred because he was plonker. You'll need to make connections between the text and yourself, human behaviours, and events. Okay, so the human behaviours are the way people think. So we'll get jealous, we'll get greedy, and so on. We're all prejudiced about something or other. The way people behave, so selfishly, erratically, rationally, irrationally. The way people interact with others, interact with the planet, interact with animals, whatever. Cultural beliefs and values, anything about people. Okay, the other thing is events. So and one example of an event is a piece of literature that's been written or created. What can you think of that's similar or contrasting to the text that you're responding to? Perhaps you can compare two characters, which would be pretty cool. Okay, and politics. Maybe something's happening in politics. There's always a lot going on with Trump. So maybe you can relate something from your text to something that's happening in politics. Current events, historical events, and possible future events. Perhaps it's reminiscent of something that happened in World War II, and so on. Again, don't panic because we have templates in this book to help you with this. All right, so a merit response is convincing. So it gives clear reasons, just reading from the clear reasons for why you're thinking that way. What you say relates clearly to the text, like you're really connecting with it. It seems authentic, it's solid. And your critical thinking is really up there. Perceptive responses, we also call them insightful or original. So as well as being clear and well reasoned, we'll have your teacher reacting with comments such as this: wow, I hadn't thought of it that way before. What an interesting connection, and I can see why you made it. Or I can tell this text has had a huge effect on you. Your response will show a mature understanding of the author's purpose and main ideas, as well as your response to these. Okay. Key. At every level, you must support what you're saying with evidence from the text. There are examples later on that will show you how to do that. Okay, exemplars. NZQA exemplars are available here. That's a hyperlink. Just click on it. If you do not understand the commentary, ask your teacher. Your teacher can go through it with you. How is this graded? Now, I give my students a grade after each one. So they hand in the draft, I give them feedback, and then they fix it up and they give me their final response. That's response number 1. I give them a grade, so I might get a merit. And then we go through the same process with all of them right the way through. In the end, they might have grades like this. Okay, so for each response. What I then do is I take an overall grade. Okay, and here we've got a high A, a high A, a low A, a high A. So there's a lot of A's there, but there's one N and one merit, and they sort of cancel each other out kind of thing. So there's definitely an achieved there. So that's how we work it out. So if you get a not achieved for your second one, as this person has here, it's not the end of the world. Okay. Okay, page 8, manage your time. All right, this achievement standard will probably run over 2 to 3 terms. On the table below, map out when each text type is to be submitted. Note that a draft copy must be handed in first. Feedback will be given on this, which should be used to help improve the response before the final is submitted. So you need to write or type in the day your work is due that week and the day it's due row. So I'll just pop me back up there. So in this row here, perhaps your teacher wants something due on the Friday here. So you just type in Friday. Oh, that's a bit of a mess. Or write in Friday. Perhaps this one's going to be due on the Monday. Perhaps they're all due on a Friday. I used to make mine all due on a Friday. Okay, so you can just, that's a mess. You could just write it in there, and then you write in what's due. So perhaps your long written draft is due. Okay, so what you can do is you can just copy and paste things from here and down onto there, and then I'd say 2 weeks after that maybe your final would be due. But you need to do this in conjunction with your teacher. Perhaps your teacher has already done it on this sheet. Perhaps it's all mapped out. Okay. If your teacher doesn't care which order that you do them in, I strongly suggest you think carefully about that, because you should really, if you're not a great reader of novels, have one long written text due in the middle and one due at the end of the time frame. This allows time to get these texts read. Okay, so it's always easy to begin with a TV program or a film because you've always watched one in the holidays. Everyone watches a film in the holidays, don't they? Okay, so I've got space for 3 terms there. be a bit of a worry if you're still doing things in term 4, I think, but maybe you've got half term 1, half term 4, I don't know. Okay, let's move on. Page 9. Here we go. Keep track of your text choices and grades. Fill in the table and the author or director of your text choices as you come across them during the year. There is a space on the right to remind you that your text should be checked by your teacher first. So I'll just put that in, you can tick it off, whatever, or just ignore it. It's up to you, but you'd be mad, as it says here, if you don't get things checked by the teacher first. You run the risk of doing a lot of work on your response only for it to be rejected because the text wasn't at your curriculum level. This table will also help you keep track of your text types, ensuring you meet the requirements of the standard. It would be such a bummer for everyone to suddenly realise, oh no, you've done 3 short texts and 1 long text. Okay, so just keep a check. Okay, so that's it there. This page here, page 10, is about blending your quotations into your sentences rather than just plonking them in. And you can see some examples here. So Stanley had bad luck in his life. I'm just reading this one here. I had rotten luck because my grandfather was cursed. So this is the students writing here, and obviously this is the quotation. They're completely separate and they need to be together. Okay, they needed to be blended together. So as it says here, the quote has been plonked in. It's not part of the student's own sentence, it's in a separate sentence of its own. So here's a better way of doing it. Stanley said he had, comma, rotten luck because my grandfather was cursed. Okay, I could have done this instead of putting the my, which would have been a bit better probably. Put it in square brackets and his to make it more grammatically correct. Okay, the square brackets show that you've changed the original quote. Okay, so that's blended in. And then there's another example here. Here, this one, Danny was a smoker but didn't care. Yeah, but only if I live right. You can see that what the student has said here, it seems to have nothing to do with the quotation. Like a reader wouldn't know what the student was talking about. So you've got to find a way to blend that somehow, to link the two rather. Okay, so here's the good bit. Danny was a smoker but didn't care. And then the students added this. When told that smoking would kill him, he replied, yeah, but only if I live right. Alright, and remember that comma, this one. Alright. So your words plus the quotation equals a sentence. You can refer back to that as you work, remember? Okay, page 11. To help you think. This booklet has awesome templates to help you think about how the text connects with you, your experience and beliefs, what the text shows about how humans behave, e.g. we're all greedy as, not really. What the text reminds you of, that should say, from the wider world, e.g. other texts, historical, current or possible future events. But what could you say about those things? So we've got the templates later on, and but what are you going to put into those templates? That's the thing. So there's some ideas down below here to think about. Let's have a look. So you can question things about it. Ask things like, why might this have happened? What if? Who might be interested in this and why? And so on and so on. So have a look, refer back at that. If you're stuck, refer back at this page, page 11, and it might help you. Okay? Page 12. Okay, producing your responses, the steps. So 6 workbooks follow, one for each text. Print them or use them electronically, it's totally up to you. The first page requires you to note down 3 things that made an impression on you. So that's step A, as you can see there. So you've got to write 3 things. So if you went to a movie or read a book and somebody said, oh, so what do you think? It's, oh my gosh, the ending was just amazing because I didn't see it coming. So you've got the ending to write there. Okay, and then the next thing you might say is, oh, there's a character in there that frustrated the heck out of me, drove me insane. And this one might be something like, gee, it was really cool. It was set in a bay in New Zealand that I've been to before, and I really understand how the characters were feeling about being there. So you put the setting in there. So you can see you've got just a quick note. And then you might want to make some notes about examples from the text in these boxes, okay? Just to help you find that evidence while you're thinking of it. That's then going to, each of those is then going to translate to here. And you're going to have one for each page. So these are the planning pages for each paragraph. Okay, so those are going to be your 3 paragraphs. Heaps of room to plan. Then you're going to write your draft, which is then going to become your final after you've got feedback. Once you've written your draft, you will check it against this checklist. Now the blue writing that you see there is actually an example of some of the types of things you could say, so it's worth checking that even before you start. Okay, let's have a look at the student workbook. Right, so you've got 6 of these. They're all identical. So student workbook for text 1. So you write your name in there, text title, author, director, text type, what it is. And then your first impression. So I'm just reading from the top here. What really rocked your boat about this text? Now that could be a good rockin' or a bad rockin'. What's going to stick with you? These don't have to be positive things either. So perhaps the text has stood out for you because you couldn't relate to anything. The ending was ridiculous. It really dragged on, whatever. Even though it's negative, this is still your reaction, the way you've responded. So tell us about it. Alternatively, perhaps you loved something, you were amazed by someone, or left with burning questions. Again, all responses. In the table below, write down 3 things that stood out for you about this text. There are some ideas down the right-hand side to help you. These 3 things could form 3 paragraphs or sections of your response. When you're done, copy your first impressions over into the pages that follow. Check page 8 if you're not sure what to do. That's actually page 12. Alright. Okay. So, let's have a look at this. Down the right hand column you have got, move me over here now, you've got a whole lot of ideas of things that could have impressed you. For example, about the characters or the people involved. Was there something they did that specifically wowed you? Perhaps there was a way they reacted to something or someone, a relationship they have, their drive, spirit, motivation, or perhaps conversely their hopeless attitude. Perhaps how you can or cannot relate to them. Perhaps they're excessively evil, brave, or selfless. Perhaps they remind you of somebody and that's really made a connection with you. Okay. You could talk about the story itself, so it's believability, credibility. Do you believe the narrator? Do you believe the story? Or if it's something sci-fi, it can still be credible because you can really see the planets going that way. From whose point of view is it told, and is it biased? Is the narrator reliable? There's a whole lot of things down here, and there's a couple of hyperlinks there as well. Okay. Right, so you fill that in and then you'll transfer whatever you put into these boxes, and I've colour coded them, into these boxes here. Okay, so this is your planning template for your paragraph. So over here so you can see that's that tan colour, and there's the tan colour there. You're just transferring it over. Okay, so just write that in there. Then you've got to think about, so perhaps you're talking about this character that really frustrated you, so you write that there. Now, what personal connections do you have? And here's some ideas of some starters here. Okay, I could really relate to this or to this person, perhaps because I've been a bit like this sometimes too, or whatever. Okay, so there's a few starters there. So your personal connections, so your life, your beliefs. What about human behaviours? The way we think or react, our values, our motivations. Consider things like prejudice, greed, jealousy, etc. And there's an example there. I think it's clear that jealousy is like a little lump of coal in us all, ever ready to burn hot. Okay, so it's to do with that. How does this relate to the wider world? So that includes your historical, current, or possible future events, as well as things like other texts, remember? So, for example, you can say, Fred's heroism reminds me of, and think of a hero in another text. The ending is similar to, da-da-da-da. And here's one about the wider world. Let's make this bigger. This is ridiculous. Okay, when reading about this, I couldn't help thinking of the massive tsunami experience in Japan in 2011. Alright, and then there's audience and purpose. What reaction is he or she trying to get from the reader or the viewer? Why? Why do they want that reaction? Does the author or director target a specific audience or type? Would different audiences react differently? So these are all the things that you can consider. Now, you won't write as much for some boxes as others, and there might be kind of nothing that you can write about one box, I don't know. But the template is designed to force you to think as much as you can. Alright? Now, that just carries on. There's number 2, so that's impression 2, it's blue. There's impression 3, okay, it's green to match the colours in that earlier page. Now your next step, okay, page 18, so this is your last step. You've got to write your response here, or you can write it anywhere, on refill, on a new Google Doc, whatever. But here's a page that you can use if you want. So write your response here using your notes on the previous page to help you, or pages rather. A short introduction should introduce the text title, its author, director, and give a very short synopsis, also known as a summary, of only 2 or 3 sentences. Remember also to complete your tracking chart, so that's a hyperlink there as well that you need to, or that you can just go straight to, so keep track of all of your responses there as well. Okay, here's a checklist. Move me up there again. So you can just tick these off as you go. Got my wrong pen. Right, here we go. You can just insert a symbol or colour the box, whatever you like. So this one, the first part is your structure. Have you got these things? An intro and conclusion, 3 body paragraphs. Your introduction should have these things in it. I always get my students to underline long text, so films, novels, autobiographies, long text, long line. That's how I get them to remember. Long text, long line. Short text, like a poem or a short story or an article. Short text, short lines, the 2 little short lines. So that's an easy way to remember it. Okay, so yeah, all of those things. Now here, for each paragraph, I've given you a bit of example of the types of things you could say as well. So each paragraph has got to do these things. You've got to introduce the main point in that first sentence. That's basic paragraph etiquette, right? But then what are you going to say from there? How are you going to develop your thinking? Now remember what we've been talking about in planning, your connections to yourself, to human behaviour, and to the wider world. Okay, so there are examples there that you can, I will let you read. I'm not going to read over them. You can read them in your book. That they should help you with the type of thing that we're looking for. And as it says here, you may not be able to comment on all of these aspects. Also, you may be writing about the connection between the text and yourself. Happy, clever accident, you naturally touch on other aspects such as human behaviours, and boom, it's done. So a lot of you will be able to do that quite naturally. And then you sort of go down into the human behaviour box and you think, oh, I think I've already talked about that, and you probably have. Okay. Now, a little trick for young players is that sometimes we get distracted. For example, this bit here talks about how this character is very judgmental, and then goes on later on to talk about how we're all judgmental. Now, if the student wasn't careful, they could carry on and on and on and talk about how people are judgmental, and then that goes into things like racism, and wouldn't it be a beautiful planet if we weren't judgmental, and da da da. Hang on a minute, you've got to get back to the text. Okay, so when you read those examples in blue, you'll see there that I always go back to the text. So don't go getting distracted and start writing about being judgmental when you're supposed to be writing about the text. So you've just got to rein it in. And of course you've got to give examples here. Okay, so that's really important. You can't pass without the evidence. Bit of a conclusion to wrap it up. And then mechanics. Are you graded on that? No, you're not. But should your writing be great anyway? So of course it should. Okay, so this one here I've been pushing right the way through. Make plenty of use of I, me and my pronouns to show that there's lots and lots of personal response here. It's vital. Of course your sentence has got to make sense, punctuation correct, blend those quotations, use the quotation marks properly, and no typos. Alright. So the next page simply takes you into the booklet for text 2, and it goes on. You've got 6 booklets and they're all identical, so run through them, use them. Remember, manage your time, print out that time management sheet, transfer it into your diary, whatever helps keep you organised. Do not leave it till the last minute, because you'll find yourself in a whole lot of pickle. Okay, well, all the best, and I'm sure it will go well.